everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to be talking about tools to communicate your road design in RoadEng. So I'm Erin. I am one of our sort of resident webinar hosts here, and I'm joined by my colleague, Matthew Dickey, who's going to tackle the majority of today's presentation. So to start, I just wanted to add a little bit of context for what we're going to be talking about. So to begin, we are going to start with a completed design. We figured out, and this could be you've already completed your design and you figured out the geometry of your road, you figured out the materials that are required, the construction effort. That's great. Now the problem is you are not the only one who needs to know these things and plan around those expectations. So the benefits that you've got here in a design can be completely lost if you don't communicate them. So we're going to be talking today all about that sort of next step, if I can advance my slide, is how to communicate it. So the trouble is there is no one-size-fits-all solution for how to communicate your design. So we're going to talk about a few different, or I should say a variety of communication options and settings that you can utilize when you go to communicate your road project so that those benefits of design are not lost. Now, there's a whole bunch of sort of different buckets of ways you can communicate your design. You've got tabular data, this could include some quantitative data on cut and fill volumes, or even staking information that you're going to use to go back out into the field with. We've got our spatial data that often ends up back in another software, such as Esri or ArcGIS. And then we've got sort of our visual or documentation outputs that include sort of visual and annotated information. In particular, we've got Multiplot here, as well as other options such as imagery, DWG files, and exporting out to Avenza. So there's a bunch of different tools, there's a bunch of different strategies, and there's a whole bunch of different functionality that can help you communicate. So today, our official plan is we're going to tackle a whole bunch of these. Now, unlike other webinars that we have, this is not a workflow webinar. So for the people in the future watching this off of YouTube, we do use chapter functionality, so you can expand that description section and actually click on the specific chapters or communication methods that you're most interested in. Don't watch the full webinar, unless of course you want to. And for the folks that are in this live webinar, if we have, in particular for the export digital options that we're going to talk about at the end, if we haven't shown one that you want to see, type it in the chat and we can definitely include it. So we're going to start in Multiplot, which is RoadEng's sort of digital documentation creation place. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of different options you have for controlling what's displayed, backgrounds, labels, hatching, etc. From there, move into some of the more graphical and tabular outputs, cut and fill data, mass haul, and then the more sophisticated mass haul version, which is Opti haul. And then again to that export digital output options that I mentioned. So you can type them in the chat and let us know. And before I pass it to Matt, a quick PSA, we did just launch an online training portal. And for those of you in this webinar today that are on support, you can get free enrollment. And within that core RoadEng course, we actually do have a whole section that talks about Multiplot, some tutorials that are around it. So if you're interested, there's a link on the screen. We'll put it in the video description up on YouTube. But yeah, certainly check it out, request your free access, and you can learn a little bit more about Multiplot there as well. And with that, enough for me. I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Matt. We'll get his screen sharing. And yeah, Matt, it's all yours.
All right, excellent. Perfect. So, as Erin said, we have a design, and we've already done the hard part of figuring out where we want to put things and all that good stuff. Now, let's dive in, and we can start by chatting about communicating your design. And before I do jump into those buckets that Erin introduced, of course, it's not very valuable if you don't share all that information that you figured out. But even without any of these digital outputs that we're going to look at or documentation that we've looked at, having figured this out, there's value in that. So being able to, as an individual talk with the folks involved with your project is very valuable. So if we were to be in a case where we weren't using any of this other functionality that we're talking about, if we just told someone to go realign that twisty turny road and straighten it out, well, we have no idea what they're going to produce, how much it's going to cost, or where they're going to put the road. So even if we don't give them any kind of documentation, being able to say, well, start at kilometer such and such, you're going to have to climb up hard to get on top of a ridge. So you're going to have like a 5 meter deep fill at the start. You're going to go through the ridge with a 3 meter-ish cut, and then you're going to fill that draw in with a stacked rock fill. Without any of these visuals, of course, it's hard to imagine, but just knowing that and being able to communicate that is better than nothing. Now, of course, it's always nice when you take some of these different functionalities and strategies that we're going to talk about and combine them. So from that, let's dive into some kind of in-software stuff. And the first thing that we'll talk about is our multiplot editor. And if anyone in the group has a CAD background, this is kind of equivalent to like a paper space type environment where we've already modeled what we want to model, but we want to put it together into a document so it's easy to digest and format it. So I've clicked the multiplot icon down here, and we can either build this out from scratch, or we can start with something that we already have. So I'm going to start by just starting with something that we already have. So I'm going to just select my page size that I'd like to use, and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to access our web library. And so I'll use a pre-formatted plan over profile chapter, and I will add another chapter for my cross sections. Oh, and I clicked the same thing twice. Silly me. A cross section chapter. And I'll do a little bit of wiggling here just to get this the way I'd like. But at that really high level, what we're dealing with here is we have a book. We have chapters within that book, and we have pages within those chapters. And these chapters largely control the format of the pages within them. And then the book is a collection of chapters. And as we build out one of these multi-plot documents, it's not something that you have to do every time or redo and make the changes that you always want to make every time. It's one of those things that if we had have changed something like our company name to Softree, for example, well then we could, once we're happy with it, we could save out that chapter. So I've got my chapter selected, I could hit save, and then I could use that on a future project. Now if I wanted to have the same collection of chapters together on future projects, well I could hit save book layout and I could bring that in the future. So here I'm just going to switch over to a different book layout that I already have saved, and we'll go with that one. So I've got my title block, I've got plan over profile, cross sections, and it's all set up from that last project that I had there. So hopefully that at least sheds some light on the high-level overview of what's going on in our multiplot. The next thing to really talk about here is, well, what if we want to build one of these from scratch? And I'm not going to build the whole thing from scratch, but I'm going to pretend that we are. So I'm not going to take the time to make it perfect and pretty, but I'm going to start out by selecting the page size I'd like to use. And I'm just double clicking in this at the chapter level, double clicking in here, and I'm going to say, well, I want to have a grid visible. and I want to snap to that grid. So I can see, and it might be hard to see on someone else's screen, but I've got a series of dots. So then if I say, well, I want to add in my plan view, I can pull this up, and that grid makes it really easy to snap to where things are at. So I'm going to pull that over here. In this case, I'll set my scale at 1 to 1,000. And I'm going to add a profile. I'm going to do the same thing, scale 1 to 1,000. I'm just going to size this. And again, the grids make it nice and easy to line things up. I'll double click that subview and change that scale to be something reasonable. And here we can see, well, it's not showing me my whole road. What's going on there? So I'm going to right click at my chapter level. I'm going to go into my pagination options. And here I've got it set to just show 1,000 meters, when in reality I want to show, have it page through based off of my plan and profile width. I'm going to tell it, well, let's overlap that 15%. And we'll do that for our whole road. So we'll hit OK. And now I have several pages in this chapter. And they cycle through to show me the whole project extents. Now, with this, if I have something like this that I want to move that around here, well, I can. And I'm going to purposely mess something up here. I'm going to just select that, and we'll notice that I'm at the chapter level. So here, if I decide I want to shift that down, I'm going to, well, I could do it tabularly by clicking scroll and turning off auto and changing my coordinates or station range. But I'm going to highlight that subview. I'm going to hold in the shift button on my keyboard, and I'm going to use the arrow keys. And we shift that down. Now, that's great. That's an important function to know, how to move things around. And if we had have hit control, we could rotate it. But I did this at the chapter level. So as I click through here, we'll see. Oh, I guess it was just on the that page. So here I've turned it off auto, and that is still on auto. So I misspoke. But the idea of having these on auto or not, if I were to save this out to use it on a future project, if I had that position not on auto, and I went to do a project tens of kilometers away from here, well then if I had that saved, it's not going to automatically show the location of my new design on page 1. It's going to show me based off of the coordinates, that, and that. So as you build out these documents and you go to save them for future use, if you're saving it as a template, just make sure you have things set to auto that control your scrolling. Now, the next thing to kind of talk about, the subviews are obviously important. That's where we display the actual geometry of our design, but there's all sorts of other things that we can add in here. So if I want to add a text box, for example, I can click rectangle. Now here we're getting that warning that I'm just on a page. So I'll say example. I'll pull that over here. And if I expect that to be on page 2, I'll click page 2 and it's not there. So we can see here that we've got this little green icon, and that's telling me that I've only added it to the current page. If I had my chapter selected and add that in, we see that little green triangle in the upper right is no longer there. And if we go to page 1, page 2, page 3, it's always there because it was added at the chapter level. Now another thing about these text boxes that's useful to note And again, I'm not going to add everything to this to build out a reasonable document, but if I wanted to have this represent something other than what I've just typed in here, we have some system-defined text. So we could go, well, I want to show sheet X of n. I'll make it oriented at the right, at the bottom. Away we go. So now I can see, well, page 1 shows I'm on sheet 1, sheet 2, etc. And it's really easy to add those text boxes in wherever you'd like them. So add it in as you see fit, and you can change things like your font and rectangles, etc. as you see fit. Now another and a useful functionality that can trip folks up is, well, if I have this set up and I expect I'm going to be making edits to things and I don't want to accidentally move something, so say I were to click this and were to accidentally nudge that over. Well, if I just wanted to always keep that in the position I'd like, I can say, well, let's lock the position for that subview. So now if I click this and drag, I can't accidentally move it, and I can't go up to my edges and resize it. Now I can if I want to change something like formatting what's displayed in there. I can double click it and get to those options. But it makes it easy to, not accidentally reposition it. If we want to reposition it, we can just turn off locked position, make it unlocked, and now we can move it around as we always liked. Now if it was something like, well, if it was something that we really wanted to be sure that no one was messing around with the way we formatted it, so say I didn't want to accidentally turn that to be a date, which you'd have to be pretty aware of what you're doing to accidentally do that. We could turn it to fully locked. And so with this, we see we've got a lock showing up there. I can't even click that to select it. If I want to edit it, I can turn on edit locked item. And now I can edit as I see fit. Or we can make it unlocked. So I'm going to add in another chapter. And I'm going to make this my cross sections. So we'll position that over here. We'll drag that down. And once again, if I want to control how much of my road I'm seeing there, I'll go into my pagination options. And I want to use my sections. So now I've got 47 pages of sections, so total page count of 50. And we can see here that we've got some sections seemingly right on top of sections. So station 0, station 0, station 0, station 0.9. Well, that has to do with what report points that we're displaying. And these aren't actually identical. There's just going to be a difference between them. But if I select that subview, and if I go up to layout, I can go into my point types and I can say, well, I don't want to see all of these different types of report points. Maybe I only want to report things in 100-meter intervals. It'd be pretty coarse. Maybe I want to show everywhere that I've inserted a culvert. We can turn that on, and there we've got 0, somewhere where there's a culvert, station 100, station 189, which there's a culvert. So it's really easy to control what we're looking at and the frequency that we're looking at those items. Now another thing that we can do here, we've gone one way with it. If we just want to isolate a certain section, so say I want to look at the first 200 meters. Actually, let's go 199 so it fits on our our page. I've limited that to go from start to station 199 and away we go. Now if we add that in and we say let's go to station 400, we've got that 375 and then 400 shows up on this page and it's filling up the rest of the chapter with the remaining sections. And in the software, dot, dot to dot, dot covers our full extents. Now, if we want to change the layout to, say, have just one section per page, well, we can go up to layout and we can change that rows and columns setting. So that's kind of a quick overview of how Multiplot works. Important takeaway, we've got pages inside chapters inside of a workbook. And we've got pagination settings, we've got different subviews, and we can add those out and we can save them so we don't have to do it over and over again once we have it set up. Let's go with something that looks a little nicer than what I had just added in there. Actually, we'll go back to that. So let's talk about how we can control how things look in here. So to start, I'm gonna position that window so I can see what I want to see. And I can double click in here and I can say, well, let's change our line type for slope stakes. So I'm just clicking in the subview. I'm going to go into my slope stakes here. I'm going to make that a heavier line, easier to see. So that's easy. And controlling these display settings is going to behave the same way whether I'm in the multiplot or if I'm actually setting things up in the model. Now the two aren't linked. We can see we've got some different formatting showing between the two, but that UI is the same here. So if I wanted to turn off my culverts, I can come in here and there's a checkbox for that. Now, in this case, I've got a few things going on with my design that isn't, that I'd like to show that I don't see as my options. So in this case, I have a guardrail here. Now, if we right click in here, we don't see a checkbox with a plus next to it that lets us control how we display a guardrail. But our templates are set up to have template codes. So if I hover over here, I can see, well, there is a template code at that point that is called out to be GP6. So if I want to show where I have a guardrail in my plan view, I can come in here, click template codes, I'll click add. So I want to go GP6. I just want to show that. We're going to change our color. We're going to change our line type. We'll hit OK. We'll hit OK. And there we are. We can see everywhere that we've got our guardrail added. Well, that's great. Maybe we want to show something hatched. So there's a few different ways we can hatch things in our plan view. Well, it's going to revolve around shading, but say I wanted to display my stacked rock fill here. Well, I could use the idea of point codes for that. I could say, well, let's go RFXL to RE. We could go in here. We could say, well, let's set our shading up. I'm going to remove all these. Click add. And let's go there to, where is it? There. And we'll make that silver. And I'll make that a little, rather than being transparent, let's change that to be dots. So I've got that showing up as being hatched. And let's just turn off our background here so it's a little clearer what we have going on. We don't have all that other stuff being busy. So we can hatch between our point codes, and the point codes are similar to how we set up the guardrail setting. Now if we come in here, we could also shade that based off of a surface or based off our material layers. I'm going to do something different. Rather than showing me my stacked rock fill, which I have as layer 7, let's just show my pavement surface. I'll change that to be dark gray. And there we are. So I didn't have to actually look here to see that that is ST3 that I wanted to split out between. I just knew that was layer 3, and I wanted to show it as such. So layer 3. So that's controlling a lot of the functionality for line types. Now the other thing that's worth mentioning here is we've got backgrounds. So I've turned that off, which included my topo contours and my imagery. So I'll turn that on. We can see here we've got an image, we've got our topo contours, and these backgrounds are just different terrain files that we can toggle on and off whether they're displayed. So if I don't want to see my image, I can turn plan display off for that, and I can still see my contours. And in here, there is a draw order. So I'm going to make both of these displayed. But if I shift my contours up, well, contours get drawn first, and then the image gets drawn on top of it, and it's going to block everything out. So we want to at least be aware of that draw order. And then another thing in here that we can control, if we click properties, we can come in here and say, well, I don't want that to be washed out at all, or I want it to be really washed out. Let's go really washed out. So I'm going to make it 80% washed out, so it's going to appear much fainter. So there we are. Versus no washout. So easy to control, and you can add in a whole bunch of different backgrounds to control what you see there. So the next kind of big ticket item that's going to help us control how things behave is, well, labeling. So, and a lot of this functionality works the same across different views. So if we come in here, those template codes that we have set, we can control them. So got those here in the multiplot. If I want to turn on shading, we can do that there as well. So similarly to all that functionality in the plan view, if we go to our profile view, we can come in here, and while we can see we've got the ability to toggle template codes on and off, slope stakes, etc., control visualization with the plus. Great. Next thing we're going to talk about is labels. So labels only get one checkbox in the views here. If we want to turn off all of our labels, we can. So there go all my labels. I'm going to turn those back on. If we want to control what we see for labels, so in this case, I'll turn that back on. We can see our beginning end of curves, grades, great. If we come in here and we say, well, I don't want to see the beginning end of my curves, I can just double click that to turn that off. And there we are. So I'll turn that back on. There's a bunch of system-defined labels here that we can toggle on and off really easy. I'll turn on my culverts. Great. We can see our culvert sizes in our plan view here now too. And for these labels, we can control them either at an individual label level or as a class globally. So for that, if I right-click in here and click Edit Labels, if I want to move that, so I've got Edit Label tool selected, I can click it, I can drag it, and things get moved around for me. Now if I want to move it without doing it by dragging it with the mouse, I can double-click that, I can go into position, and I can say, well, let's extend our leader out here. Let's put that at a 35-degree angle. Great. Now if I want this to be flipped the other orientation, we can switch that around, and we flipped it over there. Now here we flip the orientation of the leader. If I want to flip what side of the line that label falls on, well, I can do that. I'm just going to double click in there. I'm going to come in here in vertical offset. I'm going to change that negative to a positive, and we've got it on the other side of the line. So pretty easy to work with. If we ever decided that that was the way I wanted all of these labels to be, well, we could come in here and we could say set as default label formatting. I'm going to do that for a different one instead here. I'm going to do it to this one. I'm going to switch that over. So I'm going to set that as my class default labeling. And I'm going to leave this reset all existing point and feature formatting off. So with that, we're going to do that, and it changes everything that was set at the default value. Now, if I had have done that, and I turned this on, we'll see that this one that we had previously moved around gets moved as well. So it's set up to be kind of allow you to make those granular changes if you'd like, but if you want to change things at a global level, you can. So those changes that I made were just using the Edit Label tool, and we could also make those global changes by doing it at the window level. So right-click Profile Options. We can come in here, and I was messing around with that. So let's go in here, we'll flip that. And we've changed everything by doing it at the window level. So that is that. And I should mention here just, of course, you can change your text. In this case, if I want to turn the transparency off, I'm going to do that, and away we go. Another thing that I'll just mention, and for the sake of time, I won't go into it now, you can also create your own custom labels where you're bringing in different attributes, and you can set the frequency based off report point for those. Yeah, I won't do it now though. And then the other thing that I really should cover is, well, what if there's just something that I want to annotate that isn't connected to an attribute on my design or a specific station? Well, and for that we have floating labels. So what floating labels are, if I click Edit Label tool, and if I'm within the snapping tolerance of a label, I can see my cursor changes. But if I'm outside of that snapping tolerance and I click, well, it opens this up and I can type whatever I want. So there we are. Now with this, if I pull that around, it's just floating, hence the floating label. If we would like to add a leader to it, we can come in here, we can go to our position, and we can, under leader, put the connector to be arrow, and we'll change our text angle to be 90 here. We'll put a line underneath, or let's make it a box. So we've got a box around that, but now since we've told it that we want a leader, if we pull this around, that leader location stays. Now it's not fixed forever. We can come in here, we can select that leader, or that label, and we can come within the anchor point of that leader tip. We see our cursor changes and we can pull that around wherever we'd like. So we can annotate and add those little details that we want to account for using floating labels. Little details that aren't just something that has to do with directly with your road geometry. So similar to labels, another thing that we have access to is, well, if I come down here, and we'll talk about what's showing up there, but let's come down here. We have this subview option. So in here, if I wanted to say, well, let's call out what template is being used. We'll add that, and I'll just shift this up. Now it's delineating where I'm using my default template, where I'm using my road with W-beam and rock. That's that one, W-beam. So we've got that split out. And so these subviews are really flexible, and you can really cover a lot with the different options in there. So template parameters or custom labels are all really useful and helpful to really customize what gets shown up there. So while we're on sub windows, rather than just showing a label, we can use sub windows to show other things here as well. So we can show graphics, mass haul diagram being one of those graphics, but let's also show a graphic for our horizontal curves. So here we can see where our horizontal curves are, we can see where the vertical curves are, and they're just stacked and easy to look at. So really easy to set this up to show a bunch of different things that you may want to articulate to those building the roads, those permitting the roads, those making sure you're adhering to all the things you need to adhere to, etc. So let's talk about tabular data, and we'll circle back on this mass haul diagram here in a moment. So tabular data, I've got a data table down here. If we go back to that multiplot, we can add in tabular data really easily. It's just a matter of going in here and say, well, I want to add in a data table. We can customize that just the same way as we're going to do it in a moment in our model. So, oops. So if I want to change what's being displayed here, right now I've got my stationing called out every 100 meters. I've got my cut and fill volumes for subgrade. I've got my fill volumes for surface 1, 2, 3. If I want to include my volume for surface 7, I can. So I'm going to just right click in here, data options. I'm going to go into columns. And I'm going to scroll down here and I'm going to say, well, I want to see surface 7. Now, if I wanted to, rather than see, say, my subgrade called out as just that common subgrade material, if I wanted to get a breakdown for other materials, say I wanted to know how much hard pan or I'm using for fill or solid rock. Solid rock's a little more interesting here. Let's go with our actually, we'll call out all of these. So we've got 3 different material fill types. We'll do the same for our cuts. So there we've got a breakdown for surface volume 7, but we've also got the breakdown for individual materials if we want to track those individual materials from our ground types. So it's really easy to customize what we want to show there. We could change it around to show something completely different. Now in this case, I happen to like seeing my material volumes. So rather than updating that, I'm going to create a new data table. So new window, data, and I've got some culverts here. I want to see those culverts. So I'm going to right click data options. In this case, I don't care about summarizing my culverts in 100-meter intervals. I just want to see the culvert information as there's culvert. So I'm going to click the plus here. I'm going to turn off auto intervals, and I'm going to turn on culvert insertion points. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to turn on columns. Of course, I don't really care about how much I'm cutting and filling between my culverts. But what I do care about here is, let's go culvert diameter and culvert length. So there we are. We can see the stations where we've added a pipe in. We can see the diameter and the length of pipe required at each station. So if we wanted to export that, so we can, I showed how we can add it into the multiplot. If we want to export that, well, we can. So I think the most common spot to take our tabular data is going to be in Excel. We can just right-click, copy data to clipboard. We can come in here and we can paste it. So easy peasy. Now, if we had something where we weren't just taking it over to Excel or another program where it's really easy to just copy and paste, well, we could export that out as an Ascii file. We could click the data ribbon with our data table active, and we could click export to Ascii, and away we go. So if we wanted to be comma separated, well, we could select our delimiter to be a comma. So that would be one way if we wanted to create tabular data for construction staking. We could set that up for ourselves. Now there's other automated settings that we can use here, and we will cover that shortly. Well, we're on the topic of earthworks quantities, though. We can't really talk about that without mentioning the mass haul diagram, material movement, and Opti haul. So this subview that we have shown here is the mass haul diagram. It's showing us our surplus and deficits of earthworks along the length of our road. We can configure that. So if I right-click my mass haul options here, if, for example, I want to see my free haul material movement, I can turn that on and I can shade it. So I'll just leave it as that. So anything that's moved less than 24 meters in this case is going to be tracked as free haul. Now, if I want to get that detailed breakdown for my material movement, I can right-click, copy mass haul to clipboard. I can come in here and I can click paste. So we've got our conventional mass haul information pasted in. And this is giving me my cut volume. So we're balancing our cuts and fills here. The cut centroid is at station 0.6 and fill centroid is at 364.6. So we can get that tabular breakdown of our material movement. Now this mass haul diagram isn't perfect, and this design happens to have a little bit of complexity in it. So the reason this mass haul diagram isn't perfect to communicate that is, well, we've got, let's show it here, this rock fill, which I want it to be a very specific material. So I don't want that to be any old material just being moved as short of a distance as possible. I want to make sure it's actually my material I have spec'd as solid rock. And I won't go into kind of setting that up here today just for the sake of time. But it is set up. And if I want to get that level of detail for my material movement schedule, well, I'm going to want to look at my Opti haul. Let's pull this way up here. So if we are reading the mass haul diagram, typically the mass haul diagram is also representing material movement direction. But it's an approximation. So here we can see that that surplus is assumed to be moved ahead, and it's all all of our materials are lumped together and just treated as one and the same. In reality here, we've got a spot where we can pull our solid rock material for that stacked rock fill from. So that material all comes from the start of my road. And I have that assigned as a pit, just as a side note. So I've got my pit in there, just a solid rock source. So all that material has to come from here. But of course, if we're building through something, it's nice to take that material that it doesn't matter what the quality is and move that the short distance. So here the Opti hull is giving us that breakdown that accounts for our material requirements where they're necessary, but if not, it's going to just choose the cheapest solution for us. Now, if we want that tabular breakdown of what we have displayed here, and we can see by hovering here, we can copy Opti hull to clipboard. We'll include all the details here. So I can see a whole lot more information, including my cost estimate information. I can see what pits are being opened up, and if I come down to the bottom of this, I can see kind of that mass haul breakdown, but it's for each individual material. If I go down here, my solid rock, there's only one source for that. It's coming from pit 1, so I can see where that material comes from. So that station and where it goes to. So volume movement, bill station, distance, and category, whether it's free haul, overhaul, or end haul. So that is our material movement. So we've covered tabular data, we've covered material movement, we've covered kind of controlling what we're seeing in the different views. And that carries over for the multiplot, or if we just want to control it for visualizing on our computer. Next, we're left with, well, how do I take this awesome design and model that we've put together, and I want to hand it off to someone to maybe construction stake, maybe to look at it in other software? Well, it's really easy, really painless. We can come up to the top here, we can click the file icon, we can hit save as, we click our drop down, and we can choose whatever format we'd like. And so for a lot of those jumping back and forth between different softwares or construction staking, I'm a fan of LandXML. LandXML is nice because, well, let's just hit save here. It lets us select what surfaces we save, so it's going to preserve the triangulation in your design surfaces if you'd like. So I can come in here and I wanted to say I didn't want to include all the surfacing information. I just wanted the surveyor to lay out my subgrade. Well, I can turn off all these other layers and just save out my subgrade. Now, if I wanted all of that, I can turn on the or the corridor surfaces that I would like to include. Now we can also include our cross-section information with this. So these cross-sections, it'll take the cross-section geometry it's calculated, fix that, and give it as a tabular output for construction staking as well. And then for our alignment, a lot of other formats, if you save a road design, the alignment gets approximated as a polyline, which sometimes it can be negligible and sometimes it can matter depending on who's using it and what the preference is. So if we save it out as a LandXML file, that alignment is a proper curve where we have curves. So rather than sampling in a series of lines connected together, it's a formula representing that curve for us. So LandXML is a nice format. It's meant to be kind of a universal format. Of course, if we want something even lower level, we can save it out as a text file. This would be kind of that, rather than staking to a surface, we could stake to a point. So we can come in here, we can say, well, I want to include all my points. I want to set my fields up to include my station, the surface it's associated with it, point coordinates, and code. Well, we can hit OK, and then that's going to be saved out as a text file, and put that on your data logger and stake to points. And then we can come up here and we can hit file, save as, and if we wanted line work, we could save it out as a DXF, DWG, DGN, etc. And then if we wanted to jump over to a GIS environment, we could save it as a shape file, or again, we could set up some really generic Ascii format to take what we wanted over for that. And then the last format here that I'll mention So this document that we have created, if we want to save that out as a digital, in a digital form, we can hit File, we can hit Save As, and we can hit Avenza file. So this is a zip file. If we hit save, it lets us choose what view we're looking at, whether it's the plan or the multiplot. And with that, it'll be saved as a georeferenced JPEG inside a zip file, so you can open it on the Avenza app. And if you have that on your smartphone or tablet, you can walk around and you can have a little icon following you, showing you where you're at along the length of your design. And then if you really wanted to get ambitious and share it with others, and if they had a Windows device, you can run RoadEng right in the field. So in this case, you can look at your model and see where you're at with if you connect it to a GPS. So that was a lot of information, and of course, as Aaron introduced, it's something where not necessarily finding a workflow for it, but more covering all the, and it wasn't a all-encompassing list, but covering a bunch of the different tools and strategies you can use to help communicate that design with others. So I think we've got some time for questions.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm going to attempt to list off a few of the questions, and if you have one or if there was something we didn't cover that you were hoping to see, now is the time to put it into the chat. So we're going to go back here way to the start to begin with a multi-plot question. So this question is, I do have some gaps that appear in my vertical profile in multi-plot, and how do I resolve this?
Let's have a peek.
Maybe we could ask for if that particular question asker wants to add a little bit more detail. It does sound like a case-specific one, but yeah, more detail in the chat is awesome too.
Yeah, I'll try to take a stab at it. One thing will be here is depending on how you have the subviews. Oh, yeah. It's like the gaps here for the jump would be maybe my first guess. I'll try to tackle that. So here we can see as I make this smaller, that jump happens sooner. And if I make it small enough, or if I change my scale, we've got more jumps happening. So those little steps are in order to show everything that needs to be shown. So the way we cycle through here is it's meant to show everything that needs to be shown. But in this example, if we had a smaller area to work with, let's make it small enough. Suddenly we can't show the top of that crest anymore. So the software is automatically splitting that for us and shifting it down at that location it deems fit. Control that, you're either changing your vertical scale or you're going to want to give it more or less real estate to wiggle around. Hopefully that answers that question.
Awesome. Let's move to the next one, which relates to point codes when you're tackling, I believe, some of the display shading. So where can I find a list of all the different codes?
Short answer is you can't, but that's partially a good thing, and it's partially a good thing. Well, it is a good thing because it's flexible. So with that, users can go through, they can build their own templates from scratch if they're really ambitious. And with that, they can make and call point codes whatever they like. So if it's not a list, but if you want to know what point codes are being used along your road or in the templates that you have assigned, well, you can go into the template editor, and if we just kind of zoom in on any one thing, if we hover here, we can hover and we get a readout of the codes with that hover tip. So I can see at this location I've got 2 codes, actually 3. The squiggly line means there's a private code there, but I've got codes ST2 and ST5 at that location, and this private code of R. And then if we want to come down here, same thing. If I was curious what that's going to be called out as, I can hover over it and see, well, RER is being applied. Yeah, just there is no all-encompassing list, because if you get into some really specialized template or build one yourself, you can use different things there. But you will find as you get familiar with the software, there's some common codes that are being called out. So RER is your road edge at subgrade, CL centerline, DI ditch inside, DO ditch outside, and SS is slope stake. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Okay, let's tackle a couple more. We've got 5 minutes left in the webinar. Next question, is there an option to export to KMZ? And then the second part of it is also for Google Earth.
Yeah, so we can hit File, Save As here. And I should double check. Now to export to KMZ, it's going to be in a lat long format. So in order to visualize it in Google Earth, we need a projection applied. And I do here. So I can hit File, Save As, and we can come down here and we say, well, Google Earth, we'll go with that. We'll hit Save. We can control what actually gets exported out there. And there we are. Now I could go find where that is saved, or I think, yeah, since I checked that button, it's opening Google Earth for me. And I'll just mention here, this is a fictitious example, so if anyone happens to recognize this spot, it's not that we're not that we're planning to reel on your road on you. Yeah, so we can export to KMZ, KML, no problem. And Google Earth also, you can bring in other formats such as shape too. So if we had exported that as shape, we could have looked at it there.
Okay, why don't we make this one our last question. Is there an ability to create a 3D drive-through with the finished road and then export it to a video for a client presentation?
Not directly, but you certainly can do a 3D drive-through. You'd need to have the video recording done elsewhere on your desktop. And I'll just jump in here. Now, if we right-click in our 3D view, we can click that drive-through button, and we can hit play, and we can see as we motor along our roadway, we can see what we're dealing with. Now, what you're actually going to see is going to be, of course, dependent on how you've set up your 3D view. But one thing that might be catching someone's eye here is we have this target that we can see. So that target, and in this case, it's fallen off the end of the road, so that's why it just disappeared. But we can set that target in the options setting here. If you want to evaluate sight lines and stuff like that, it's a useful tool aside from just the showing what it'll look like. If you want to look at it in the other direction, we can. But we are doing that on the software. It's not automatically recording the video, so I'd have to have a screen recording going.
And then just a follow-up to that, this one has obviously the cut being shown. Are we able to show that finished road?
Like with no, without the shading here through that?
I assume that is what they are asking.
Okay, you can. Now for that though, you'd want to export your road to a terrain file, and you'd want to merge that into your surface. So right now we're treating these as different surfaces. You would want to do a merge function here, and it's not really set up for that, but yeah, if we saved that design as a terrain surface, I guess maybe I'll just do it. So here's my topo surface. Now I'm gonna cheat here just to make it a little less clicking, but the premise is going to be the same. I want to I'm just going to add one surface rather than keeping these all as different surfaces. So final merge surface, great. All right, file, save as. So sections, I'll go with that final merge surface. I guess I didn't have to set that up here too. I've got edit in terrain. And there was a checkbox that I didn't turn on there, but so here's my road surface. So that's called example 1. Back in this file, if I want to merge that in here, I can click merge terrains, browse. We'll clip this in. We'll remodel that. I'm going to not do my contours this time, just oh. Oopsie daisies. Select feature by name. Oh, that's all it is. At a very small triangle spacing there. So I've got that, and I can come in here now. So I've merged those two surfaces together, and I can click drive through, and away we go. So similar, only we aren't seeing where we're actually going through those cuts and fills. And here I've got a couple funny things going on just with my surface, and that's remnants of the file I'm using, not necessarily that I did anything wrong. It's just the DEM had some noise in it. So hopefully that answers that question.
Awesome. Nothing like a hard question to end the webinar. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for attending today. This video is going to be up on our YouTube channel, and then leverage those links in the chapter description below to figure out and find the section of it that you might want to look back at. And we look forward to seeing you all at another webinar again soon.
Thanks, everyone.